Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Yes. Hello.
This is a horror movie podcast. We get together every week and we talk about a horror movie. It's the October-thon every year in October, the month of Halloween. We do a bunch of extra episodes, a bit of a marathon as it were, throughout the month, with 4 episodes per week, even more if you're a patron. Plug. But this was actually one of our vote winners. Our patrons at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV every month get to vote on an episode to get an option of 4 movies, and they vote. We do actually do extra votes for the month of October, and this was a Wes Craven vote, and the winner was the title of the video is quite obvious, and that is The People Under the Stairs, which is a film from 1991, written and directed by Wes Craven, and one that I remember seeing patches of, at least in my youth, but really not remembering any of it in detail or be able to tell you who was in it, what the characters were like, or anything else. So it was practically a first time watch, even though I have like faint memories of like 1 or 2 scenes, but that was about it.
Sure.
I assume you knew this better than I did. You'd seen this.
So I'd also remembered seeing it as a kid, and it's kind of funny because I remember really liking it as a kid, and then I think I watched it like maybe a year or 2 ago. Just it like randomly popped up on like a streaming service. I was like, oh, I haven't seen this in a while, and yeah, I remember last time I watched it not really digging it that much, but I'll save my thoughts on it if I still feel that way.
Maybe third time's the charm, because we're about to find out how you felt this time. So we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you warning before we get any spoilers. So the premise of People Under the Stairs is that a young kid named Phil, whose family is about to be evicted because the seedy landlord wants to basically force everyone out so they can tear down the building and put up some new, nicer apartments so that, rich people can move in, not these scummy poor people as they see it. And Phil has this very bad influence in the form of Ving Rhames' character, who is actually like a really awful person in this. So he's basically trying to encourage him to become a little thief, and wants his help to rip off the house of the landlord. And once they get in there, there's a couple of things in the way, of course, which we'll talk about when we get into the details. But ultimately, they discover that there's actually captive people being held, would you believe it, under the stairs, as well as a daughter who seems to be abused and another character sort of running around in the wall. So, and it's basically a house of horrors. There's trapdoors everywhere. There's secret passageways. I swear, like, one of the weirdest things I'll say about this movie is that I was expecting there to be some in continuities or something in the mythology that explained why this house had so many wide gaps between all the walls so people could run around like this. And there never was. It's just, so the house is just that by default. Okay, that's weird.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so basically, Phil, our young character, who is played by Brandon Adams, who you might recognise from the Mighty Ducks films, or you might even recognise him from The Sandlot. He was in a lot of those movies from the early to mid-90s, so you might recognise his face. But he's running around, and the evil couple who live in there, Everett McGill plays the man, who's basically what he's titled as. Although they actually call each other Mummy and Daddy, just let that sink in. And then you've got Wendy Roby, who plays Woman. But Everett McGill I know very well. He's from Twin Peaks, of course, and he was the villain in Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, for you action movie aficionados. But that's the big setup, Phil, which is not his real name, of course. That's what his sister calls him. His real name is Poindexter, which it doesn't honestly doesn't sound that much better.
Yeah.
But she calls him Phil, so that's kind of what his nickname is. And he gets trapped inside the house with all of this going on, with these awful people who do all sorts of nasty things to people that they deem as poor. They're extremely racist. It is worth mentioning Phil as a black character, and that does kind of play into some of the themes that are going on in the movie as well. So that's the gist of The People Under the Stairs, and I will therefore ask Tim the question that I'm sure everyone's been waiting for with bated breath. Isn't that right, Daddy? So, Tim, how did you feel about this movie on this watch?
It's funny again because before I remember, I think last time I watched, I thought it was kind of slow or felt like a little bored, and I don't know, maybe it just might have been maybe I'm misremembering it, or maybe something else was going on the last time I watched it. Maybe I wasn't paying attention because this time when I watched it, I freaking loved it. I thought it was great. I think it's not a perfect movie by any means, but I think it's a lot of fun. Um, it has kind of like a weird tone because there are like instances where it seems kind of like a kids movie. Like it kind of feels like, oh, like am I watching like Goonies or something? But then there are times where it's like, oh no, this is like a legitimate horror thing. Yeah, that's like going on now. Um, so it's a little over the place, but I think it still makes like for a pretty fun ride. I think the characters are good. Like you said, it's like a house of horrors, which I feel like we don't see too often, and I always like when stuff like I don't know feels kind of video gamey like that when like there are like spikes coming down in a wall or like trap doors and stuff like that stuff I just think is really fun and yeah, and it's just like it's got it's one of those good movies where it's like, oh, it's actually about something, like a maybe I'm misremembering this, but I feel like maybe Jordan Peele might have talked about this at some point. Because he like a lot of his his movies have been like kind of about like societal horrors, and I think he cited this before as being like a maybe an influencer or something on him where because it definitely is reflecting like a societal horror, like there's racism in there, gentrification is basically kind of like the big overall of the movie.
When you said
uh,
that there, it's like you said societal hoarder, and I'm like, there was no hoarders
Hoarder.
in this.
Well, I mean, they're hoarding people, I guess, if you count
Well,
that.
touche.
But no, I think yeah, no, it's yeah, maybe I guess I don't want to say it's perfect. Like I think it might be a little uneven in parts, but overall, I think it is a pretty fun, good movie.
What's funny is I kind of didn't see this like properly for a long time because I remembered not really liking what I saw of it when I was a kid, and I don't know why. Something about it just left a taste in my mouth. I guess it's kind of a weird thing. Watching it now though properly from start to finish, I do think it's overall pretty entertaining.
Mm.
There's definitely some ballsy things in it that I didn't know about. That some visuals that will stick with me. I will just say there was a gimp suit involved that just kind of came out of nowhere, and we'll talk about that in spoilers. But um, I do. Well, I'm glad you kind of spotted something as well there, because my biggest complaint, I suppose, of this movie is how uneven the tone was, in that
Mm.
it would go from doing something that felt like a real horror movie where there was genuine threat and like these awful characters who are doing awful things. That there's a scene, for example, early on that implies that the abuse that the daughter Alice is maybe going through, and it's like a really dark implication. It's really, but then there's other scenes where it feels like they're really comical villains, and it's almost like hijinks the way that
Yeah.
like traps are being set off, or the way characters are not, the kids narrowly missing things, or the way he's got a bit of an attitude on him. He's cracking one-liners occasionally.
Yeah. Like it feels like there are times where it like dips into like Goonies or Home Alone territory.
Home Alone, I think that's what I wasn't thinking. Goodies, I was thinking Home Alone. That was the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I was thinking this feels like a weird Kevin McAllister style story, but there's also actual like really nasty deaths happening and
Yeah.
and all sorts. So it's a really weird mix of things, and I wasn't sure. Like I kept like bouncing around with that, and I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of weird. Like, so it felt a bit uneven overall, but it's hard to deny there's a lot of really entertaining stuff in there, kind of throughout,
Yeah.
and characters that are fairly likable. Obviously, the main one being Phil, who is likable to watch, luckily, because we're kind of with him for a lot of the movie. I will say that the movie, I mean, it's only about an hour 45, but it does feel a little bit long, and I think that's because it's split in a really weird way. We can't really talk about it till spoilers, but there's kind of a weird split about 2/3 through that kind of feels separate from the rest of the movie.
Sure.
And that gives it a really weird vibe. Although I do actually think that last chunk is kind of elevates the movie a little bit, because it really brings it back round to like, how do I say this without spoilers? It gives you something to root for. I'll say that. In a way that's different from the rest of the film. But I don't think everything kind of lands, though. Some of it does kind of have that 90s feeling of like, I don't know, almost like I can't take all of it seriously. In a weird way. I'll say this though, I do have nostalgia for any film from the early to mid 90s that has that version of the Universal movie intro, because I love that little tune.
It's always good. Yeah.
I have nostalgia for that. I don't mind denying it. I don't mind denying it. His big sister, Phil's big sister in this, did you recognize her from anything? Because I think her voice is particularly distinct.
Yeah. I not off the top of my head. Like, it did sound familiar, but I can't place her.
Well, Mr. I Love Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 over here just didn't recognize one of the lead stars from that movie. I guess it's all been lies the whole time.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize she was in it. That's cool though. Wes Craven bringing her back.
Wes Craven had nothing to do with Nightmare on Elm Street 5.
Oh, he oversaw something.
He oversaw shit.
I'm sure they gave him a look at the script, or I don't know, some residuals or something for creating characters.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. I'm sure he got a check in the mail because he created it, but I think that's where his involvement began and end. Everything after the third one. So, well, obviously, aside from 7, which was New Nightmare. Obviously, he was back for that. I'm not trying to claim otherwise. Which, interestingly, hadn't happened yet. This is before New Nightmare. New Nightmare was 94. This is 1991.
Yeah.
So Wes Craven, is famously for me kind of very up and down. Like, obviously, he has his classics. He has Nightmare on Elm Street. He has Scream. He has Hills Have Eyes. But then he also has things like Swamp Thing and Vampire in Brooklyn and other turds.
I always put Last House on the Left on there. Some people think that's a classic, but I think that's just, it's so bad.
Yeah, people go back and forth on that one, and it's one that we've not actually done yet, and I'm sure we will. In fact, I think it was the runner-up to this. It was what almost beat this for this slot. So we'll get to it someday. Not to worry.
I'll say Wes Craven is definitely near and dear to my heart because he has made like some of my favorite horror movies, and I think the good ones are really good, but.
Yes.
I definitely acknowledge that there are, honestly, a lot of bad ones.
Yes. Tim's favorite, of course, is My Soul to Take.
Of course, yeah.
Yes. Which I've not seen. I'm making fun of it, but from reputation alone. But
like stuff like you already mentioned some of the more notorious ones, but like obviously Cursed. We
that's right.
we just did an episode on that, and then like some of them like stuff like Shocker I think is a bad movie, but it's kind of like cheesy fun. So I don't know, I'll at least give him that, like, some of his bad movies are at least fun to watch, and because they're so dumb and cheesy. But sometimes he like knocks it out of the park, so it's interesting.
Yeah, sometimes. And I'm just I clicked on a movie there called Deadly Friend that I've not seen. And I was thinking it was Deadly Blessing, which I have seen, but that's a separate movie. So
yes,
Deadly Friends
confused as well.
Yeah, Deadly Friends is one I've not seen. So add it to the list. But yeah, so that's my general thoughts. So I think it's enjoyable. I do think it has a lot of 90s quirkiness that does make you feel a little bit dated. But
yeah, there's a rap at the end.
There's a rap at the end. Like I say, the weird like. It came out a year after Home Alone. It's hard not to feel like it's kind of oddly taken some of that into it.
Yeah.
But then you've got Everett McGill running around in a gimp suit with a shotgun, like trying to kill a kid. Like it's just kind of back and forth. So, but I guess that's the gist of it. Well, we'll give the warning though. We'll give the spoiler warning though, so we can dive into the movie properly. So I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers of Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. Thank you to all you guys. They are Patreon producers for the month at the time of recording. And you can, of course, support us at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month. Obviously, the higher tiers might get you a producer credit, but just for $1, you get access to an exclusive extra episode every single month of Streams After Midnight. And you have access to the old back catalogue, which is, by the end of this month, should be hitting 30, because we do 4 in October for the Octoberthon. So, that's pretty cool. And then at the $5 tier, you get early access to the episodes by a day. And, of course, you get to vote once a month on a thing. And then there's some new votes as well at the $10 tier. So go and have a look and see if you're interested in keeping all the content coming, getting some bonuses and showing your support. But of course, obviously, hitting the like button on YouTube is really important too. That's the free way of doing it. Just hit the like button, commenting, let us know what you think. All these things do help. They're all support. So do not shy away from those options. So thank you. And if you don't do it, I'll put Tim under the stairs.
Oh no. The one thing that I always kind of forget and that surprises me about this movie is that from the title, and if you look at the cover, you think like the people under the stairs are going to be like these sinister bad guys, and those are going to be like the evil things that you have to like run away from. But I always forget they're like, I don't want to say they're like a small part of the movie, but they're not in it as much as I always think.
Yeah, they're relatively small in the sense that, I mean, they have an importance to the story that comes up, as it goes throughout, but they're not the ultimate villains, and they're also, not there that much. There's only a few scenes where we really kind of deal with them. So,
and I do like the visual of them. Like they kind of have this like, like, I don't know, like they look like almost like mole people or something. Like they're all like very pale, and like there's a few of them that kind of seems like they have like, I don't know, like weird kind of bulgy skin. I don't like, almost corpse like, I guess is kind of how you describe it. But like when you do kind of get the few glimpses of them, I kind of like that.
Apparently they're starved. Daddy's cut off some of the tongues or some of their other parts, and you get this sense, this idea. So the movie introduces, there's actually a really kind of like this thing that filmmakers sometimes do, where they'll have the opening scene be kind of a thesis, the introduction, the presentation of like, this is what the movie's going to be, and it's Phil getting these tarot cards reading from his sister.
Oh, yeah.
And it's basically talking about how the Phil will die, the boy will die, but a man will come out on the other side. And it's like, it's basically just saying this is what the movie's going to be. In a sort of broad thematic sense. But their mother's dying, and they're going to get kicked out of their apartment. And Ving Rhames basically convinces them to come and help with a job. And just casually mentioned that he robbed a liquor store the night before as well. So he's kind of roped into it, and he's constantly basically made to feel guilty about not helping his mother by not doing it. So he's his character's really an awful piece of shit. And not to mention that later on he kind of like abandons him and leaves him for dead to save his own ass a couple of times when they get into the house. So, but it becomes this thing. Okay, and we get teases of the house. We get I think very memorable moment, I think, where they're eating dinner, or like at least Daddy's eating dinner. And he's eating meat, and he pulls you think it's like a pit. It's like a pit from a fruit, but it's actually like buckshot from like whoever he's eating. Because we don't even mention they're cannibals, but they're cannibals.
Yeah.
But from whoever he's eating, he obviously shot them with a shotgun, so he's like actually taking out the buckshot as he's eating them, which is such a bizarre idea. But it's memorable. It sticks in my mind because it is kind of unique and weird. I think what's funny about it is that once we actually get to meet them properly and they're in the house and they're running after the kid, is that once he comes out with the gimp suit on, I'm like, oh geez, these guys are even weirder than I thought. I think I was almost surprised after that point, because he's got it off for a while and he's just in normal clothes, and it's not until really towards the end where he puts it back on again. I thought it was kind of strange how he almost didn't feel weird enough for the rest of the movie, where I was like, I guess he went back to being more of a Home Alone villain, with with the threat of murder being attached to him. But like when he came out in the gimp suit, I'm like, damn, this movie goes places. This movie goes to some weird places.
Sure. I mean, and obviously, we don't want to kink shame him if that's what he needs to do sexually or whatever. I mean, that's totally fine. I mean, if he's putting it on to because he needs that to when he like runs around or kills people, though, that's not good.
Yes, he's literally hunting a child. He's hunting a child, and he puts on a gimp suit for it. So I will kink shame that. I'm sorry, Tim, but I will kink shame someone who gets kinked off by kinking someone's lights out.
Well, I mean, if that's why he's doing it, then sure. But
the kinking is one might call it.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, if that's your normal everyday thing that you like to do, that's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that.
How many gimp suits you got in the closet, Tim?
I don't know.
Getting defensive here is all I'm saying.
hey, I'm just just don't want anyone to feel ashamed for what they like to do.
Yeah.
As long as as long as you're not hurting anyone, it's all good.
Unless it's consensual, heart.
Oh sure, sure, yeah. That's
Typically,
yeah.
typically the social circles who run around in gimp suits tend to like a bit of a spanking.
for sure, yeah. But, yeah, as long as it's consensual, it's all good.
Safe words and all that jazz. Make sure you have a
Yeah.
safe word. And, yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, so
No, it is a striking image though. Yeah, like him like running around with a shotgun in that suit.
oh, for a second I wasn't even sure it was the same character. I'm like, is this a new character that's just been introduced? Oh no, it's just him in the suit. I did kind of like the sort of the getting in, like where like Phil tries to go up and pretend to be like a Boy Scout and try to get in to like use the
Yeah, that was
bathroom,
fun.
and the woman's just not having it. And then like the sort of the partner, the other criminal, is like, okay, I'll just pretend to be from the gas board, and I'll say I need to go in to like check the meter, and he has like a fake ID for it and everything. She lets him in, and then some time passes. And they don't go in because they don't try to sneak in now because they're worried about the well-being of their compatriot. Well, I say they. I mean, I'm not counting Phil in this. I'm counting just Ving Rhames' character. But he's like, oh no, he's probably stealing all the gold coins for himself. Because the reason why they're targeting the house is because when they robbed the liquor store, there was like a letter to do with like them selling their gold coin collection, which is worth a fortune. So they're going in to try and find the gold coins. So they break in. After they see that the woman leaves, and they're like, wait, she left him on his own? That's weird. Oh, he's probably looking for all the stuff on his own. So they go in, and of course, when Phil finds him in the basement, he's already dead. Like,
Yeah.
that's why she left, because she's already killed him, or she's let the dog kill him, or she's let the people under the stairs kill him because they're hungry. You know, the whole thing, because the dog like spits out his ring at one point later, so he's definitely been feeding on him.
I feel bad for the dog. It's not his fault that he, they trained him to do this.
He's a villain the entire movie, Tim.
Yeah, but it's not like he wants to be though. It's like they, clearly, have raised him and trained him to be that way.
Yeah, and your typical 17-year-old incel has been trained that way too, but there's no going back. Once they've created the monster, the monster has to be dealt with.
Well, I mean, people, it's different. I mean, they, they can learn from their mistakes. They can try not to be that way. They don't have to seek stuff out on their own.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I like the dog. I feel bad for him.
I cheered when the dog got stabbed.
That's so sad. I had to hug my dog, so it's okay.
I do hug the cats a lot when there's any like animal death in a movie, I have to admit. But the dog here was a villain the entire time and was trying to kill him.
Bad.
Yes. Yeah. He's a bad dog. Not a good dog, a bad dog.
Yeah. It's not his fault, but yes, he was bad.
Very useful. So obviously, like, they come back home and the two of them freak out. There's a whole hiding from the dog, and there's trying to like duck and dive, and there's a lot of cat and mouse. I don't want to bring more animals into the mix, but there's a lot of game of cat and mouse with like trying not to be noticed, but them realizing because the van's outside and knowing that something's going on. And Ving Rhames gets shot with a shotgun, and the kid's about to be found. The Phil's going to be grabbed. However, luckily for him, one of the secret passageways, he sees like someone go in, and he's able to use the same passageway, and we get all of these spaces in between the walls. We get all the air ducts, and it's honestly, sometimes I go through these movies in order. Sometimes I just kind of cherry pick important moments, and this is a cherry pick movie because so much of this cat and mouse stuff, like, it'd be impossible to remember it all in sequence, because a lot of it is like, them yelling into the walls, him being mad at the dog, him being mad because there's this character named Roach who's running around in the walls, who's from under the stairs, but he escaped and is running around in the walls like stealing food, and Alice the daughter's kind of helping him. So he's this likable character. This is another actor that's very recognizable as well. He's one of these actors who's popped up in a lot of things over the past 25 years. By the name of Sean Whalen.
Sure.
Are you familiar with him? Did you not recognize him?
Oh, is he from Whalen-Yutani? Or I don't know.
He was in Twister. He was in.
My wife recognized him. I'm sure he's a fine man.
He's one of the McPoyles on It's Always Sunny.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
There you go. So, you know, he's someone
Cool.
who's popped up in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He was in Hatchet 3, which we reviewed.
Oh, there you go. Okay. I
He
mean,
was,
he's young in this. I didn't really recognize him.
he was in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
He was in a few episodes of Lost. I mean, he's popped up all over the place.
Cool.
He was in an episode of Scrubs, but that's garbage, so I understand why you wouldn't remember him from that.
Of course not. Yeah, that show sucks.
I actually can't remember. Do you also dislike it genuinely, or is that
So what's funny is,
not Scrubs?
not Scrubs, but so I remember when it was on. I didn't watch it like religiously, but I would catch it now and again, and I remember liking it. And then once with the pandemic and everything, again, just spending time at home and pretty much just always have something on the TV. So one of the things, so outside of October when I only watch horror movies, but one of the things me and my wife usually like to do is like find a long running sitcom, because that's just something you can easily pop on for a few hours while you're doing stuff, and you don't have to pay like super close attention, but always trying to find like something like that we either haven't watched in a while, or one of us has never seen before. So like we did, like went through like all of like like Seinfeld, with obviously seen that before, but like we just recently rewatched all of, like Frasier, so stuff like that. And then I thought like, oh, like haven't watched Scrubs in a while, and I think my wife would probably like it too. She'd never seen it, so like started watching that, and I don't know. I think maybe we lasted maybe about a season or so, but it is. I mean, if you liked it back in the day, that's fine, but it does not hold up at all. I thought it was just like the characters are annoying. It's so. I mean, it's it makes sense for the it shouldn't, but it's kind of part part of the of the times or whatever. But there's just so many gay jokes. It's just like gay joke the show. Like, and yeah, I was just like, ooh, yeah, this is not good.
That's maybe my favorite segment.
Sorry if you like Scrubs.
That's maybe my favorite segment of any episode we've ever done, is this Tim admitting that he has discovered how much he thinks Scrubs is a piece of shit.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it's quite bad.
I never liked it. I always thought the tone was weird, and Zach Braff annoys me to no end. So
yeah,
that's basically it. Yep. No. No. Scrubs sucks. Sorry, people, but you know it to be true in your hearts.
Yeah. Again, like I don't fault people that liked it at the time. It was a popular sitcom, but if you haven't watched it in a while, I don't know, maybe go back and watch like half an episode. I don't think it's gonna hold up.
So where are we? So no, all that stuff, and there's some obviously important beats in here where at first he's kind of scared of Roach, but then it becomes more trusting of him. He runs into Alice, and Alice is kind of the character who explains a lot of this. Like they wanted a boy, they've been searching for a boy. And something we don't find out until much later in the movie is that Mummy and Daddy are actually brother and sister. And it's not so much that they're suggesting that there's incest, it's more just that we all assume they're a married couple because they're looking for kids. So, it makes sense, right? But instead, no, they're actually brother and sister. And they come from money. They come from money from their previous generation. And they are, like you say, gentrification is a big part of this movie. And it's quite uplifting when the entire neighborhood kind of shows up to like challenge them, because when it's just the sister and the grandfather, it's like, oh, they might just kill them and it's going to be another sad ending. But then like maybe even hundreds of people, certainly close to 100 if not, show up and are like, we're going to kill us all, like we're all here, like, so that's kind of your big uplifting moment at the end. But
yeah, and it's nice that like I like the way they do it, because I mean you obviously know that like they're racist, like pretty much like from the start of the movie, but I like that there's that moment when it's just like the two of them at the door, and like she's about to say the N word, but then you get the reveal of like, oh no, like the whole neighborhood's here, and she's screwed.
Yeah, so just to go back then to kind of the middle of the movie where we're learning all this stuff. It really sells like how they are. I think talking about the house again as a whole, because the scene where he's in the bathroom with Alice and she's explaining all this, when he eventually escapes, he escapes because Roach like has a fancy like way of opening like a trap door that's behind the bathroom cabinet, which Daddy doesn't even know is there, which is kind of weird. Like, because the part of me was thinking, oh, they're going to have to explain at some point why they built the house this way, but then it turns out outside of like some of the traps that they've got to try and catch the people on the walls, like they didn't actually do this. Like all these like wide walls that are wide enough for the people to walk in, and this like trap door in the bathroom, which he's surprised is there because when he goes to open it, like when he's angry, he tries to find how it opens and he can't figure it out, so he ends up just blasting it with a shotgun. He's surprised by this, which is a weird detail.
Yeah.
Is this suggesting that like the whoever built this house in the family did have a reason for it, but obviously they don't know growing up that all these extra nooks and crannies are here?
I don't know, possibly. Also, I think it's maybe that kind of thing where it's like, these people they have like, trapped in their house, like, they pay no attention to them, they don't care about them or whatever, and it feels like they're kind of starting to form like their own, like society and stuff, and like maybe they're starting to like understand the inside of the house better than they do the actual like house owners, because they're just so not concerned about that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of turmoil because obviously a lot of this is trying to get out. Like, how do you get out of the house? And there's points where he thinks they've got the kid dead, but he's not really dead. There's obviously the moment where they're walking through the walls and he's stabbing like ferociously, and that's when he ends up hitting the dog. So there's all these like moments of tension. There's all this sort of climbing up the chimney, and there's all these various beats that play out. The big kind of turn in the movie, though, when I talked about how it's kind of split into like a sort of segment that's very sick, because there was a point where I was getting to like an hour through, and I was like, man, how's there 45 minutes of this left? Like, it feels like we're ramping up here to like the escape. And sure enough, we were, because he eventually he gets out by like going out the window in the attic, which he can jump into the pool of water. And he actually gets away. He goes back home, and he's with he's with his sister and his grandfather, who explains the history and like how this house has a reputation, and when he was a kid they didn't go past it. This is not like a new thing, and so it's all this like mythology that's built into it. But he calls the police, or he calls child services and says, I'd like to report child abuse. And we see the police come to the house, and they the pair of them are playing very nice, and they're dressed well, and they're talking about how they don't have any kids and all the rest of it. And there's a great moment here because it's one of those things where I think you're supposed to figure out what's about to happen, and it's just as they said goodbye to the police and they're going up the stairs. It's like, hey, I'm a little bit worried that I had to leave the back door open for a long time there when the police were here. Did you think any of them got out? I was like, oh, don't worry, we tranquilized everyone, no one got out. And I think you're supposed to sort of just have the idea like, yeah, but someone could have come in, right? And then the camera just sort of pans over to the kitchen, and out comes Phil, who's actually snuck back in the house. And I think for me, like, I enjoyed the movie up until this point, and some of the stuff, the trap sliding stairs, that turn so you can slide down them in the basement, and him running away from the people under the stairs who are scary to him at this point. Like, all this stuff's really cool, but I think this moment where he chooses to come back, even though it's dangerous for him, to try and save Alice because he promised they would, is the moment where you're like, okay, you know what? Like, I mean, I like the kid well enough already, but this is where you're like, oh, I'm rooting for him now. Like, he's just proven that he's a little hero. And this is kind of where you got this weird mishmash of tones, because you're like, yeah, this feels odd, like more of a... This feels like Kevin McAllister in Home Alone 2 when he decides to, like, go after the criminals because they're going to ruin Christmas for a bunch of kids, not because of some selfish reason. He's playing the hero. I mean, we find out that his sister and his grandfather are kind of in on it because they show up to like distract them, later at the doors. We talked about that scene when the neighborhood shows up. But what's your reading this like sort of turn of events?
Well, so I mean, I had the same thought because so much of the movie, it feels like the objective is to escape the house. Like, it seems like that's what you would basically kind of what you would like say the premise is, like, oh, okay, yeah, kid's trapped in this crazy house and needs to get out. So it does feel like that you are kind of reaching the end. But I agree, though. I think the um turn of events, it does work. And yeah, it's that kind of thing where um yeah, before just wanted to see him escape, and now he has like a goal, and he's a little bit more badass, and you are kind of like, all right, yeah, let's see what he's gonna do. And yeah, it does get like a little Home Alone-y, even in the sense where it's like, he would do, like, you do stuff in Home Alone where you're like, how did that not kill that guy? Like, I
Oh
feel like
sure, yeah.
dropping a brick from like the top of the house onto someone's head, like, come on.
Yeah, and
I
and
don't know.
and the chimney specifically, because
Yeah,
he's literally looking up in the chimney and he's trying to fire up with a shotgun, and he just drops a brick down and it hits him in the head, which yeah should kill him admittedly. And yeah, I like that even Alice becomes more of a character as it goes on, and she gets to actually be the
yeah,
one who defeats the mother, as it were.
yeah,
She gets to be the one who's like directly involved in that, whereas Phil uh gets to take on father, which he does. Sorry, daddy, not father. Daddy, come to daddy. But he does that with dynamite. He finds basically the people under the stairs, who he's basically explained to and tried to like tell that, hey, you're free to go. We're going to like get out of here, because that's how mother dies. Is that she's basically in the kitchen, and all of the people from under the stairs all kind of come out to like get her. Which starts in a really fun way. It literally starts with one of them coming through the stairs and grabbing her.
yeah.
So it's kind of doing like those traditional horror movie like jump out things, but it's doing it against the bad guys, which makes it a bit more fun.
Yeah, and it feels very much like something you would see in a zombie movie,
Mm.
which is cool.
Yeah, so they literally come out the cupboards and stuff in the kitchen and like get her. But yeah, so the leader of the people under the stairs, there's sort of like one long haired guy who we kind of see them more than any of them. He like directs Phil to essentially the vault in the basement. There's like actually a vault where there's just tons of money and gold coins, and because the movie ends because he uses dynamite to kill Daddy, and the
Yeah,
explosion results in all this money and coins like raining down outside with essentially all the poor people from the neighborhood who were getting screwed over by these people are just
yeah.
grabbing money out there like it's the end of the Crystal Maze. I know Tim doesn't get that reference, but that's okay. And it's just really, and the music starts and it fades to black. But it is a really kind of like, early on in the film, like when you see like how nasty what they're doing is, like, there's a scene where Daddy's like, basically he's mad because someone like robbed a liquor store. I think that's why I was mad at her. If it wasn't that, it was something else soon after. But and then Mother's like upset because she was helping like the guy in the walls, like giving him something to eat, right? So she had to
Yeah.
be punished, and she's like, "Oh, it just turns out that Daddy's stressed, so you can take out your frustration on her." And he just like takes off his belt, and the scene ends there basically, with him saying, "You can scream in hell" or something like that. But it's like super dark, and there's a lot of dark implications about what these people do to these kids, and not
Oh
like
yeah.
just cutting off limbs, but other things too. And all of this is like super absurdly dark. So it is kind of a bit of a shift when you get to the end, and it's like bricks falling on heads and the kid dropping one-liners as he's. But it's hard not to root for him though. See when he starts like dropping one-liners, like he's getting confident, like he can fight back.
Yeah.
It does. It starts to feel less like a horror movie and more like you say, like more of a just an R-rated Home Alone movie. But it is
But
fun.
yeah, yeah, like it's like you know, I mean, on a technical level, like you could probably like make some kind of complaint about it, but it is, yeah, ultimately it boils down to when you're watching it, it is still fun. And like, yeah, you like the character and you do root for him. So yeah, I mean, I think even though maybe it might be like kind of jarring from like a tone perspective, it's yeah, it still kind of makes it like entertaining when you're watching it. Um, and yeah, and speaking of like, yeah, like some like the abuse stuff, and like, I was like also thinking of like the scene where like they're forcing her to clean up that man's blood, and then like getting mad at her when she like slips and falls in it, even though it's like they practically push her into it, and then they make her take like this like that boiling hot bath and stuff. It's like, yeah, these are very nasty people.
Oh
Like,
yeah, like that whole blood cleaning up thing is weird to me because I'm like, How is just like going into the middle of a literal pool of blood and starting to scrub with a brush going to clean anything? Surely you have to like soak up all the excess blood first. You're never going to clean anything. You're just spreading that around. And like you say, the boiling bath afterwards is pretty nasty because they shove her in it's the mother specifically who shoves her in this bath of really hot water, and she's screaming because it's so warm, and her response is, well, the fires of hell are warmer. Like is basically her response. So they're absolutely awful, and do you know what they kind of are? They're kind of like the suburban like version of the family from Texas Chainsaw. In that they seem to enjoy like in a chaotic way as much like violence and torture and all the nasty things they do, and this belief they have in their family system, and that everyone else is wrong for not being part of it or thinking like they do. But it's in the context of like a couple who live in suburbia and have a house and, you know, pretend to be normal to the police and stuff like that. But when you think about the chaos and the way they act, and it's like, oh, we're coming for you and all that. Which that's the thing, because he keeps referring to Phil as boy throughout the film. So Phil gets this moment at the end where he calls him boy, back, and it's it's like kind of a neat moment. And again, it goes back to that opening scene where they talk about how the boy is going to die, but he's going to come out as a man on the other end. And I mean, he's definitely going to have grown up a bit through this turmoil. That's for sure. For sure. You grow up real fast in a situation like this, I think.
Yeah. The suburban Texas Chainsaw Massacre family, I like that. One of my like first thoughts were the I mean, I don't know their actual names, but just that like photo that was getting passed around like during like one of those protests they were like walking by someone's house, and like that like older couple came out with the guns.
Yeah, I know. That was the one that people kept pointing out, that half the photos it looked like one of them had the gun pointed at the other. So there was a lot of memes that came out of it. It was I can't remember what the city was, but it was a protest about the corruption in either the mayor's office or something like that.
But I mean, it's kind of funny though, but it's like, this is from like almost 30 years ago, and then like, but it does still kind of these villains do kind of feel like the like shitty white people stories like you hear about a lot today. Like I'm sure you could probably call mommy a Karen. Like I'm sure he's probably asked to speak to a manager in her day.
Oh, we literally had a commenter this week called Karen on a video.
Oh yeah.
Our old favorite. No, it wasn't on a Screams After Midnight, but it's the old favorite of wait. I thought I was watching the actual episode, not two people talk about it.
Jeez. I think I saw it. Yeah, you mentioned that. Like someone said like oh, there's like 3 minutes I'll never get back. It's like maybe you should have gotten a clue after like 10 seconds.
I know, like took you 3 minutes to realize this wasn't an episode of the Twilight Zone, you weirdos. I don't know. I just anyway. So a bit of a tangent, but I mean, I don't know if you've experienced it yet, but one of the things I always think is like pretty funny is when you see like there's two people or multiple people on a podcast, and like there's always like and like sometimes they'll get a complaint where someone will be like, they'll complain to the other person, they'll be like, oh, I hate when you have that guy on the show, like you should fire him, and then like the person's always like, I mean like it's not like we're a boss or anything, it's like this is our show. I don't know. It's funny. Yes, again, people, for all the people who have been writing in about Tim, it doesn't work that way. I can't just fire him.
Yes.
Yes. Trust me, I've tried.
But I do think the like that kind of like ending scene is kind of funny. Like it's I like all the money's falling down, and then
it's absurdly happy. Like if you think about it, so this came out in 1991, and then Candyman was 92, right? And they're both movies with black lead characters dealing with gentrification. Obviously Candyman goes deeper into it in a bit more of a hardcore sense, but they both have these themes, and I just think Candyman has such a dark downer of an ending, and this on the contrary has like one of the most absurdly kind of happy, like, now I mean, not only did the villains get defeated like a cartoon, but then there's literally money, raining down from the heavens for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels more like a comedy ending where it's like, hey, we beat the bad guys and we saved the neighborhood, and then now let's all start like rapping.
I mean, I don't know if I ever said this, but like, this is a weird thing to say, but it almost feels like the ending's too happy for this to be a full-on horror movie, right? Even though it definitely is a horror movie for a lot of it, and the subject and the violence we're seeing, and the subject, the subject matter of these people being held captive, and the some of the gorier elements. Look, it's definitely a horror movie, but I can't think of another horror movie that just goes absurdly. I mean, obviously there's horror movies where people survive and it's a quote unquote happy ending, but this is like the kid gets one up on the villain, which I guess makes it feel more like a like you say, like a Home Alone adventure, like kids movie, and I guess that's kind of the weird thing about it. I mean, maybe, and we keep mentioning this clash of tones. Maybe this is not a problem for them. Maybe this is like its strength. Maybe this is what makes it stand out and why it's kind of survived throughout the years, is that it does have this kind of weird mishmash of Home Alone meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, totally. One thing I do like about the ending too is like, the money's coming down, and also like every now and again there'll be a shot of like one of the people from under the stairs like walking just in the crowd, and they all kind of like look confused, like they just like look around like, oh, what's going on?
It does kind of feel like we're glossing over the fact that they have literally been living off of human meat for the last several years, and they're going to need some serious help adjusting to society and therapy and all sorts of things, and they're just like wandering away. Not like they're just gonna be roaming the streets.
Yeah, and also like no one, like, I mean, obviously like there's just a big explosion and money's coming down, so people are probably concerned with other stuff, but it's funny, like no one is like really looking at him going like, hey, are you all right? Like,
hey, that's because there's sweet tasty money falling from the heavens. They're not paying attention to,
it's true,
weirdos walking around. So I'm just saying, when they get a bit hungry, that chaos might happen. Maybe this is on par though for Detroit. From everything I see in movies, that seems on par. Every movie I've ever seen set in Detroit basically tells me that I should never visit Detroit. And no offense to anyone who happens to live in Detroit if you're listening to this, but RoboCop, It Follows, this, like everything's what was the other one? Don't Breathe, I think, was Detroit. Like everything's like, hey, look at how much of a shithole Detroit is. Don't go to Detroit.
Sure.
That's what they all say. So I don't know. But no. I mean, I would say it's a good movie. It's not. It's a very uneven movie, and it's definitely doing a lot of like experimental things, some of which I think I like that it's doing and it benefits from, and some of it just kind of feels weird and of its time. Like, there's definitely an early 90s feel to this movie. And a lot of elements, and some of that's the dialogue, some of that's whatever. Because we find out Alice has never been outside the house, at least as far as she can remember. And Phil says to her, oh, because she's looking at him a little bit funny, and she's like, oh, have you never seen a brother before? And she's like, you're not my brother. I'm an only child. And she's like, no, I mean like a black guy. You've never seen a black guy before. And she's just kind of confused by the whole thing. So yeah, like it's setting up that kind of stuff. And sort of playing with that idea that she's kind of been this sheltered character who is inherently good at her core, and ultimately ends up helping not only him but also Roach, who dies tragically. We should mention Roach gets shot at one point. He gets one of the shotgun blasts, which, by the way, for all the narrow places in this house, like that guy with the shotgun is not very good with it. Like he fires off so many shots and hits nothing. It is quite impressive. But yeah, but no, it's definitely an interesting one. It's an interesting one to revisit, and it feels like a time capsule of its era. So
I put this on the good Craven pile.
I wouldn't put it on his great pile, but I would definitely put it on the worth watching Craven pile.
Sure.
Which some of them are not. But when you're craving for Craven, this is one that you can definitely watch.
Sure.
Come on, that was gold, Tim. All right, rate the movie out of 10. How dare
you? I think I'm gonna give it a 7.5. I did actually quite enjoy this viewing of it. yeah, I think that was like a lot of fun. I like the characters. And yeah, I mean, there's that uneven tone, but again, like you said, it's like it's not like necessarily something that you get mad like while you're watching the movie. It does strangely work. In spite of it, versus like other things where maybe it might be a little more jarring or make you upset. But still, like you said, there is like like some like early '90s ishness to it, and yeah, and I do like the like that turn in the movie like we are talking about, but it does still seem like a bit too long. Like
It does. It feels
seems like
long-winded.
90 minutes would have been
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
It feels, and it's not that much of a difference, but it feels long-winded because it feels like we
Sure.
sort of stop and start again, bizarrely.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
once it actually started again, I think that was my favorite section of the movie because I was rooting for him so much because he was being a little hero. So it's kind of a catch-22 there, I suppose. Maybe just trimming down. Maybe there was just a little bit too much like running through the house from the bad guy in the middle. That could have been trimmed a bit. But
well, yeah, I mean, like you kind of mentioned it earlier. Like a lot of this stuff feels interchangeable. Like it's kind of hard to go like chronological because stuff. It's like, all right, yeah, which scene was that when he was inside the walls and being chased and stuff?
Is it the scene where the dog was chasing him? Is it the scene without the dog? Is it the scene with this or that? Like, yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, I'm gonna go with a straight 7. I think it's a good movie. I think it's got some really quirky, odd ideas in it, and I think that's actually to its benefit and kind of secures its place of being worth remembered. But it isn't perfect. There's definitely some oddities that okay, they're kind of charming, but at the same time, I'm never going to like rate it as like a super amazing movie because of those things. So, but no, I like it. And whenever I see a mighty duck, take down some bad guys, I'm always for that. So, no, 7 out of 10 for me. But if you made it this far in the People Under the Stairs review, put the word GIMP in the comments.
Okay.
I'm going to make Tim pose for the thumbnail.
Okay.
So lean back and make sure your head's not cut off. Lower. There you go. 3, 2, 1, pose. What's that? I don't get it.
Well, I'm looking downstairs.
I thought you were looking at your dick, which I guess is technically downstairs in a way, in a manner of speaking. So, ooh. All right, that has been the People Under the Stairs. Of course, let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Liking is super important on YouTube. It is the easy and free way to support us financially, of course, over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, as we mentioned earlier. But get us on Twitter, of course, at Streams Midnight. I had to think about that for a second. At Streams Midnight for updates and all sorts. And usually it's the odd funny tweet as well, because, I don't know, well, Tim trying to be funny, maybe it's a better way of putting it. But you can go get us over there. But otherwise, that's pretty much us. We are, have some more, obviously, episodes coming through Octoberthon. We record all these in advance, and I have no idea where this falls in terms of the schedule. I could check. I think it's like halfway through the month, maybe a bit further. But hopefully you've been enjoying the month so far, and you're enjoying all the extra episodes. And like I said, patrons who usually get 1 extra episode per month are getting 4 extra episodes this month, same as last year. So do check all that stuff out. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.